I should say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. And for those of you who've just joined, I'm Gulcin Cribb. I'm University Librarian here in Singapore Management University, and I'm delighted to be with you today. I have to make a confession. This is my kind of first webinar, so please excuse me if if I come across as a novice. But I'm also very proud to say that this is the first webinar in a series offered by IFLA Academic and Research Library Standing Committee. So I was the first cab off the rank. There are many more to come, and Reggie, our colleague from South Africa, is coordinating it. So today's topic is academic libraries and future and change. And I think we already have a chat facility. I think, Reggie, are you taking care of the chat or somehow? So people can ask questions, and I'd be delighted to make this as interactive as possible. And the theme of today's seminar is very, very timely. It's also very relevant to the topic of this year's IFLA World Congress in Athens, because as you know, the theme of the Congress is Dialogue for Change. So let me begin by saying that, I'm just delighted that so many people are interested in this very first webinar. And I just want to ask you, have you ever felt that you thought you had arrived at your destination and then realized that you haven't, because the destination is no longer there? It's moved further and further. And if you think back about your childhood, when we were kids, I remember, we'd be going somewhere with our parents, and we'd say to our parents, "Are we there yet, Mama or Papa? And when are we going to get there?" And we would get impatient, because it's so long to get there. So I just feel that sometimes some of us may feel this way about all these changes taking place in academia and libraries. And no one really wants to feel that we've still got a long way to go, because it feels like it's endless. The journey is just going on and on. And I hope that you don't feel that way, because I'm sure some of us have felt this way sometime or another in our careers. Because we finish one goal, one project, and then there comes another one. Or sometimes some of those projects are going at the same time. So, but academic libraries, university academic libraries, have been going through a lot of changes over the decades, as we all know. And I don't think that will stop. And I think that the pace of change is also getting faster and faster. But then life goes on, as the French say, c'est la vie. So let's have a look at some of these concepts in more detail in the next 20 minutes or so. And I must say that I'm very optimistic about our career, about our profession, because we are very adaptable as librarians. We have evolved incredibly over the centuries and decades. We wouldn't be here where we are now if we hadn't evolved. So if you look at this slide, I put here things like change is constant, change is inevitable, it's transformational, it's for the long term. I'm sure all of us are hearing these things over the years, over and over.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So we're hearing these things all the time. So I want to look at change in terms of external environment first. And I'm going to use my own library, Singapore Management University Libraries, as a case study and look at things like challenges and opportunities in the journey. So first of all, until recent times, Information was scarce. People would travel from one part of the world to another to access libraries or information. And you would hear people complain about things like, I can find no information about this topic or that topic. It's no longer the case. I don't hear many people complaining about lack of information anymore. What is scarce now is attention. That's why some economists call this decade attention economy. Because attention is very expensive. Getting the attention of our staff, our students, our presidents, our provosts, it's very hard. I mean, I find it really hard in my institution sometimes. We have to be very careful about how we get the attention of our stakeholders. We also know that we are surrounded by fake news and alternative facts and post-truth. So finding the facts in this incredible mess is also hard. Other thing that we know that's happening in our environment is that experience is becoming a lot more important than products and services. Libraries, once upon a time, used to boast about the books and the services and tables and chairs and collections. We know that things have moved from products and services to more experiences and what value we are adding to our parent institution. So I would say, I'm going to make this statement right from the outset, that we are no longer in book business. We are in our institutions business. So we have evolved from being just physical libraries to more hybrid experiences, virtual libraries. So I would say we are more of a multi-product, multi-experience, multi-purpose organization. So that's what's happening in our external environment. But the other aspect of it is that last point I'm making in my slide, our stakeholders, our users are multi-generational. They're not a homogeneous group anymore. They're not just young undergraduate students or old scholars, professors. There are many, many generations that we are interacting with. So I'm going to move on now to our external environment. So I'm just setting the environment, the scene right now. So when we look at our external environment, we see that there are so many different expectations being thrown at universities, at libraries. Governments are expecting taxpayers' money to be spent wisely. They want evidence that we are adding value to our societies and communities. And the taxpayers are saying, where's all this money going? What are the universities doing for me? The funding agencies, again, their expectations are different. The parents of the students, they want guarantees for jobs for their children when they come to university. They want their children to graduate and get very well-paid jobs. Our industry and environment, the alumni, the donors, and our library staff, most importantly. So their expectations are also different from a long time ago. Once upon a time, people would come to jobs in libraries and they think that they're going to stay there forever, for life. Well, that's no longer the case. People are moving jobs to jobs for better career opportunities. So what else is changing in this environment? There's a huge amount of competition amongst higher education providers. So I know from Singapore, for example, we have 6 universities here, and they're all competing for the best students, for the best professors, not just Singapore, of course, but all over the world. So we are competing for the best professors with the US, with UK, with Australia, and I think we are all competing for the university rankings. Of course, technology is affecting how faculty teach, how we run our business, and our stakeholders are expecting the information anywhere, anytime. They don't want to be told about things in advance. They want things just in case and with high touch. For me, only for me, customized for my needs. So these are some of the things in our external environment that is making us to think about how we change, how we adapt our libraries, our library services, and how we interact with our stakeholders. On top of that, as I said earlier, there's multi-generational and diverse groups of people that we are interacting with. So it's not only our students, but our faculty, our staff, and external public. So we've got baby boomers, Gen X, Gen Y, all in the same institution. For example, our staff, our faculty, and our students, our donors, they all come from different demographics, but not only in terms of age, from different diverse cultures. You have different races, different religions, and different cultures, different abilities. Again, that's kind of bringing a change to the way we plan and implement our services. So one size fits all doesn't work anymore. And they tell us so. I mean, there's so much more voicing of the stakeholders and our customers that we cannot ignore that. We have to listen to all of those things, and we need to make sure that we are catering for all the different stakeholder groups. So when it comes to the changing role of libraries and librarians, the value proposition we need to make to our parent organizations, whether it's the university or a college or whatever, it's got to be different for different purposes. It cannot be that we are the heart of the university, we have a monopoly in library services, therefore we will get all the resources we want, or we will be taken seriously. For that reason, it's very important for us to have a culture of assessment where we use evaluation, assessment, data, and analytics to be able to not just demonstrate, assess ourselves, but also report to our stakeholders. For example, what has changed in my library in this area is that in the last 4 or 5 years, we have actually established a unit within the library, appointed someone is the manager of data analytics for the library. And this person is responsible for managing our dashboard, for doing very deep analysis of our activities. So we know exactly what's going on. We're using big data to get intelligence about our resources, about our activities, so we can make our decisions in a much more intelligent way, so that we are not acting in the dark. There's nothing worse than planning and making decisions without data and evidence. It's not enough just to rely on statistics or figures. It's very, very important to use qualitative information as well. Asking your customers, the most important thing. So all of these things are making a huge impact on the way we run our businesses. And I'm sure it's very similar in most countries, because when you read the literature, you come across many, many articles talking about similar things. But it's very important to also engaging our stakeholders, whether it's the president, provost, the deans, our students, our staff. When we do it, we need to be systematic and focused. We need to make sure that anything that we do must have an impact. If there is no impact, there is no point in wasting our efforts and our resources to do these things. It's really got to be very, very systematic. And it cannot be systematic if you don't have the analytics and the data, if you're not able to tell the story. So this is one of the things that we have been doing here in my library. We have actually been training some of our staff in storytelling, in communication techniques about how you tell the stories without being using too much librarian language, and using the language of our end users so that we are able to make an impact. The other point that I want to make in this slide is that we cannot go solo. We cannot do things on our own. We cannot be self-sufficient. It's incredibly important to collaborate with multiple partners, multiple stakeholders, to be able to make that impact. And again, I'm going to talk about this later on in terms of examples, what kind of collaboration we do. We cannot try to make impact on our communities without working with someone else. I think most academic libraries, for example, work with their Center for Teaching Excellence or Center for English Language or Center for Wellness like counseling services or whoever. If you could collaborate with them to do projects and initiatives, it's actually more impactful because they listen to us and they take us more seriously. But good news, I mean, one of my heroes is David Langs, who is a professor in a library school. He used to be in Syracuse. I really like what he says here, that we have existed in one form or another for 4 millennia because we have changed over the decades and centuries. We know how to change, and so nobody should despair. We're very good at adapting. And because our profession is very good at, adapting to the changes in the reality. So I think that our profession has a huge potential. Let me just move on to my own university and library so I can illustrate some of those things, just in case you're wondering what kind of university is SMU. SMU is Singapore Management University. We are a relatively young university, about nearly 20 years old. We have nearly 10,000 students, and we are a predominantly social sciences university. We don't have engineering, biological sciences, and so on, but it's predominantly business, marketing, banking, finance, economics, law, social sciences, and so on. And these are the two libraries, two physical libraries that we have here. The Li Ka-shing Library with the pink sky, which is the older one, and the Kwa Gokju Law Library, which is only 2 years old. But we provide our services as one library. We don't have dedicated staff in the two libraries. Our staff work across two libraries. So it's very important for us to be agile. So we're one organization, one team, and of course we are very much into virtual services as well. Some quick facts about this library. We don't have huge printed collections. It's quite small, only 70,000 printed collection because we are predominantly digital and we work on the basis of just-in-time collections rather than just-in-case collections. But we're very, very busy. I think our visitor numbers have been quite enormous because we present the library as like the village square. So students use the library not only for studying, but for all kinds of activities. So 23 professional librarians, every single one of them have MLIS, Masters in Library Science, and we have librarians with law and accounting and business degrees. So the crux of my talk today is really more about alignment with the strategic vision of the university, and this is really very much related to future directions of a library and change management. So until 10 or 20 years ago, people in libraries would say, well, I'm in collection business, or I'm in book business, I'm in information business. Here in SMU, we have agreed that we are in not library business or book business, but we are in our university's business. We are in Singapore Management University business. So whatever we do must support one of these 4 pillars of the university. So the library exists to support faculty research productivity, faculty teaching impact, student experience and learning, and the university's reputation and impact on the community. I'm sure most of you or all of you would agree with me, there can't be anything else but this. We're not a national library, we're not a special library, but we are a university library. Therefore, we've got to support those 4 pillars. And we cannot do those 4 things without the talent innovation and operational excellence of the library. So we've really got to make sure that the foundation is there. Our talent is the right kind of talent, that we are innovative, and we have excellence in operations to be able to deliver on those 4 pillars. So this is a bit of a shift from the old days when, as I said before, libraries were there to build collections and build collections and build collections, but they did not link that collection sometimes to things like faculty research productivity, or how we framing it, how we are contextualizing it really is what matters. So my next slide is showing that alignment with things like how do we align it with our staffing resources, planning, and delivering these things. So this very simple diagram, which we use, is actually almost like a design thinking thing. So on the one hand, you've got the 4 pillars, and this is completely linked to library's annual work plans, which is then linked to unit work plans, different departments in the library, which feeds into the performance goals of each person, each staff, which is then delivered through our project planning or just do it projects. And at the end of the year, you have your performance appraisal. So all of that is linked together. And at the heart of it is employee engagement. It's very important that our staff are engaged to be able to deliver on all of those things. And that is really linked to learning and development. So you see on the left-hand side, learning and development, because you have to constantly invest in learning and development to be able to deliver on these 4 pillars. This is another way of depicting what I'm just saying. And in fact, I have borrowed this, I have adapted this diagram from a wonderful article that I really enjoyed reading, Harlan's article on ensuring academic library alignment. And I've actually got the references at the end of my slides for you to follow up later on. So we said earlier on that alignment with the university is critical, very, very important. So aligning the strategic vision of our library with the university helps us to continuously reinvent our library, which is mutually dependent with engagement of our stakeholders, whether it's staff, faculty, students, and which in turn is mutually dependent with demonstrating value to the university, which then enables you to align. It sounds like a bit complicated. If you look at the diagram, alignment with the university aligns with your strategic vision, then it helps you to reinvent your library. Engagement, so they're all incredibly mutually dependent on each other. And again, at the heart of it all is your agile and engaged culture, because without an agile, engaged culture, you cannot achieve any of those things. Okay. So sometimes people ask me, what framework to use? I'm sure you have heard all these different frameworks from different management gurus and from the literature, Harvard Business Review, and so on. Over the years, I've dabbled or I've come across, I'm sure you too, with different kind of models. But for us, for SMU, we don't adhere to one particular framework, but we are aware of, I've just listed 5 of them here, and I quite like some aspects of each one of those. For example, I like Kotter's 8 stages of change, where he talks about sense of urgency. Agile management is originally used in software development. I really like the 5 ways there. For example, it talks about peripheral vision, monitoring trends, innovations, anticipating the new. And balanced scorecard is wonderful when you want to look at the 4 perspectives, financial perspective, customer perspective, learning perspective, and so on. We have used Lean Six Sigma a little bit to some extent, and I think all of them have got some merit. And it's very important to be aware of these different models and frameworks, but only use bits of it that suits your own organization, because everything is contextual. And at the end of the day, we are here to make sure we are aligned with our parent institutions' priorities and goals. And we actually have a project management framework here in this library, and we don't do it in a big way. We are only a small library with 38 staff, so we do it in a very light way, and one person is responsible to make sure all the projects are aligned. It really helps staff to scope out a project and go through the different stages of project. It's more about discipline in terms of accountability and deliverables and things like communication plan, because I think a lot of you know that we librarians are very modest people in general. We do all these wonderful projects, and sometimes we deliver them, but we forget to tell the world about it. And I always think you can never, you cannot afford to be too humble about our achievements. We are quiet achievers. We really got to tell the world about some of those things. So at the bottom of it, I said contextual. All of it is contextual, really. It depends on your own institution. So I'm going to illustrate what I said up till now in terms of those 4 pillars. If you remember, I talked about student learning and experience, how the library adds value and contributes value to the parent institutions' priorities in student and learning. And I have put some examples here under each one of those pillars. The first one I always really praise the library is, I think we librarians have a lot of expertise, and we have a lot of ability to be able to collaborate with faculty in the area of curriculum development, working with students in information literacy, in ethical and legal uses of information. And we have just recently conducted a wonderful forum on truth and lies. One of my colleagues, Rajan Manu, he's actually on this webinar today, our business librarian. He was the major driver behind it. So we did a truth and lies forum where one of the ministers of Singapore government was actually on the panel. And we wouldn't have been able to do this forum without the help of one of our law professors. So it was a completely collaborative event where the law professor, the library, and Singapore Press Holdings, which is the major newspaper here in Singapore, and NTU, another university, we all collaborated and we did this forum together, which was open to the public. And we had 150 people here talking about truth and lies in this age. And we know that this has been a big topic since Trump got elected. So I'm giving it as an example. We had students, we had public attend that. So librarians have a lot of expertise to be able to collaborate with important stakeholders to be able to deliver those sorts of things, which again demonstrates what library does towards student learning, and also, of course, it adds to the community profile of the university. Other examples are listed here. I'm not going to read them, but our library spaces, I think many libraries around the world are now renovating old buildings and building new library buildings. It makes a big difference to student learning and experience. And I think over the years, it's been, there's a lot of evidence to show that libraries are not just study space, they are learning spaces. In fact, John Seeley Brown, a very famous educator, have written about this. It is no longer, students don't just learn in the classroom. In fact, they learn very little in the classroom. Most of the learning takes place out of the classroom. So libraries are very good examples of these learning spaces. And we actually contribute to student learning and experience because we provide these sorts of creative, reflective, and collaborative spaces in our library. So my second pillar is faculty research and teaching impact. How do we add to the faculty research and faculty teaching impact in their productivity? So when we talk to our senior colleagues like vice provost research or provost, and when we talk about how the library adds value to faculty research productivity, their eyes shine. You know, for example, here in SMU, the library is responsible, the business owner of the university's research information system, CRIS system for research publications. So we are indispensable when it comes to providing reports on research publications for faculty promotion, for tenure, for recruitment, for reporting to the government, all kinds of reports, because we have the expertise. We know how to organize these things. Of course, we provide other reports like on bibliometrics and research data management. So these are some of the examples of how we take part and we demonstrate value in increasing faculty research productivity. In the area of teaching, of course, you know, things like copyright, IP, plagiarism, and so on, it's where we add value. So I just want to show you an example of how we create these links, the bridges, and how we work with faculty. Of course, these are not the only people who work in the university, in the library. So we have research librarians dedicated to each of our academic departments or schools. In the case of business school, we have 3 dedicated librarians. They all have business degrees. In the case of law, at the moment it looks like 1, but we have actually more than 1 librarian. So the law librarians all have law degrees, and the others too. So they are the ambassadors of the library in the schools to spend time with faculty. They are the first point of contact. And then, of course, we have a whole lot of other teams like scholarly communication and so on. So once the research librarians are doing the first contact, and everybody else is involved in delivering those services. So I'm going to give you an example of this, you know, this relationship with faculty. I mean, we've still got a lot to do. We've got a lot to do. Things are changing all the time. Last year, 6 of our librarians went to Australia on a study trip. And we do this on a regular basis every few years because Australia is so close, you know, it's easy to go there. So we started a new service called Embedded Librarians or Business Librarians at the Business School. It's a pilot. So our 3 business librarians spend 1 afternoon on 3 days a week. They hold office hours in the business school. And so that we go to them. In this day and age, as you know, faculty don't come physically to the library anymore. In the old days, they used to go and look at the new arrivals and so on. So we started this service last year, and the research librarians really love it because they have a much easier interaction with their faculty, face-to-face consultations, and another way to show our value and indispensability. And these are some of the responses we got from the faculty. So the final pillar in the alignment is community. How does the library add value to the community profile of the university so that we can show and demonstrate our value and impact? Rankings is one, because most of the rankings use bibliometrics, citation reports, and faculty research reports. So we provide those sorts of reports, and we also have consultations with faculty on that. Of course, we also contribute to various accreditation exercises. We have an open access repository, and for a small university like ours, we have nearly 3 million downloads. and the repository has been in existence about 8-9 years. So all the things like relationships with alumni, the donors, the local, regional, and international alliances, like even IFLA and so on, they are all very important for the community profile of the university. They are all investing. So one of the things I'll give you as an example is right now we have 3 librarians from Shanghai spending a month with us on professional attachment. And we have a special relationship with Shanghai University of Finance and Economics because we are sister institutions. So that relationship with an international institution is, again, contributing to our university's international relations. So if people talk about how does the library add value to the university's international endeavors, here is a very good example of that. So after all this, how do we connect the stories? So I think it's very important that, as I said before, I couldn't emphasize it more, that all these things that we do, I'm sure you do similar things in your institutions, and you probably do different things too, to be able to tell the stories in connection, aligning it to the university. So it's very important for us to be able to write stories, tell stories, and share stories. And it needs to be done not just by the university librarian, but everyone else, because that will only happen if the staff are engaged and they are really interested in that. I mean, one of the other examples that we have done is digital innovation, where the library is used as a test bed for research by our faculty or these students. The students come to the library and say, can I use this or that in the library for my PhD research or my assignment and so on. That is, again, another aspect of collaboration. This picture, what is it? You see a guy sleeping there with his legs up there, okay? And there's delivery boxes and a rubbish bin, bananas, and porridge cooking here. I'm sharing this picture with you, and I'll share another one. This one, doesn't this look lovely? I'll go back to the previous one. In conclusion to my presentation today, I want to illustrate this because 8 years ago, we used to have this cafe at the entrance of our library. It looks so messy and untidy, smelly, and the first thing you see when you come into the library is the delivery man having a sleep and so on. And that's the last thing you see when you leave the library. And 3 years later, we renovated the building, and that same space is what this looks like now. We call it the lounge. So it looks like a bookshop. When you go into the bookshop, the first thing you see is an attractive shelf of lifestyle books and comfortable seating. I'm illustrating it to show the change. By bringing this kind of physical change, you're also helping change the mindset. We actually use this physical change not only for create a much more wonderful, lovely space, but also it helps with staff doing different things and creating new workflows and so on. So these are some of the other spaces we did since 2014. These are 24/7 learning commons. And this is a reflective corner there, which used to be a storeroom for broken furniture and photocopiers and so on. And look at how students are using these spaces, being so creative and flexible. These little donut chairs were meant to be like waiting area. And one day we came out and we see that, you know, students are so amazingly creative. They're doing what they want to do, being so creative with these spaces. And this is our law library. And again, those amazing chairs down there are like Singapore Airlines business class seats, and they're very popular. So I'm going to finish by talking about in this fast changing environment that we are in. We talked about the external environment. We talked about expectations of our stakeholders. We talked about our stakeholders coming from different generations and diversity. The stakeholders, of course, most important stakeholders are our own librarians, our staff. What are the kinds of skills that we need to possess to be able to deal with this change, be agile, and prepare ourselves for constant change? And I took this from ALA's 2016 list of top skills. I added here in red entrepreneurship. This was not in the original list from ALA, and I think entrepreneurship is just so important. It is not enough to be very good at our technical skills, but we need more people in our profession who are advocates, who understand the politics of the institution, and who know how to navigate organization. And it doesn't come naturally to most of us, and these are not easy skills to acquire. So people who are in leadership positions in our universities, who are in senior positions, have a huge responsibility in helping our younger colleagues, our new colleagues, mentoring them and guiding them, help them learn the organization, navigating the organization, and giving them opportunities to practice things like collaboration, creativity, and innovation. And finally, model adapt is very relevant to us because, as I mentioned before, in the agile methodology, peripheral vision is very important. Peripheral vision is being aware of what's happening in our environment and being ready. In fact, being ready so that when new things happen, we're not taken by surprise. And we also need people who have the drive to take it and to accelerate the change. Of course, as I said before, partnering with others and trusting others, they all come together. And I thought ADAPT is a good model for us. So finally, all the change is the end result of all true learning. So these are my references, but I can provide more. So I'm happy to take questions or have a conversation.
Gulcin?
Yeah.
While you were speaking, one of the questions that came up is what's JDI? And Rajan answered the question. Could you just expand a little bit on Just Do It?
Okay, thank you. So JDI is something that our university's Office of Business Improvement offers, where people don't have to go through very complicated or involved project management techniques to get things done. They're very simple things, like you may want to just create a new macro using Excel to create efficiency in some process, or you may want to do something with the scholarly community. They're just very, very small projects, just do it projects. They do it, and then they explain what they've done, and they show how it aligns with the universities and libraries' strategic vision. So that's very simple. With project management, you need to go through project proposals and plans, all that kind of thing. So it's like a light project management.
And how effective is this as compared to project management?
Well, this is usually a one-person or a two-person activity, and it gives them a sense of accomplishment, and they can share with their colleagues, also the rest of the university, that they've done this, and it gives them pride in their work, and the university and the library acknowledges these people's, it's like a morale thing, but it also encourages people to always look for ways of improvement, continuous improvement, you know. I don't know if that answers you. How effective is it? I mean, we haven't really measured it in terms of KPIs or so on, but I know that, you know, like two paraprofessionals, they get together and they create a new workflow to make something more efficient, or they do some, it's called JDI. So there's actually a form for it. The university's Office of Business Improvement actually has a workflow or something where they fill the form, they send it, and then they get acknowledgement. So it's acknowledged by the university management. It gives the library staff pride.
Gulcin, there was another question, well, there's another request. Can you tell us more about the kind of training they get in storytelling?
Oh, yeah. I don't know that, you know, we actually got an external trainer to come and conduct. Rajan would be a very good person to answer that question too, because he's in charge of our learning services. We got one of our professors who teaches this, you know, on a commercial basis, come and conduct a one-day workshop for library staff on storytelling, the importance of impact of how you tell your stories. And then it was actually, there was an experiential side to it, because people were asked to come prepared to tell stories. It can be about anything. So that was one formal workshop. But in addition to that, our library has ongoing continuous learning programs where we would invite a faculty member who is a specialist on corporate communication or in English writing or in use of impactful words. So they would come and, you know, give us informal training on that. And I think I personally take pride in, you know, telling stories, and Rajan is like that too. There's quite a few of us. So I guess we're also trying to lead by example as well, because you know, librarians are very good being experts at what they do, but as I said before, sometimes we forget who the audience is and what makes the audience tick, and how we're going to tell our story in the language that the audience understands. So they're very important. Any other questions?
Sorry, yeah, there's another question, and here they're asking for your opinion. In your opinion, what priority, can you list the levels of priority in supporting research degree students? So I presume you're talking about students that are doing senior degrees.
What do you mean with priorities?
In terms of research priorities, your research services.
Oh, I see. Okay. So we have PhD students here. It's not a huge number. And I don't know that we have ever had an issue about whether they were priority or not, because research and research students are a high priority. And it's university's priority. So it's our priority too. In terms of, you know,
sorry, Gulcin, I think the question was more in terms of services. How do you prioritize your services to the research students?
well, I mean, we provide specialized services for them. There's no question about that. For example, we have two graduate lounges in Li Ka-shing Library, one graduate lounge in the Kwagok-Chu Law Library, purely for graduate students. But that's a priority. So we have created spaces for research students, for graduate students. But so we do specialized services. I mean, we're not going to say, okay, I'm going to take the service away from undergraduates, put it to PhDs. That's never the question, because there's people who are dedicated to provide specialized training for PhD students, for doctoral students, And we know that they require one-on-one attention. They're not like a class of 48 undergraduate students, but for graduate students, you've got to give them more attention, and their research needs are different. So I don't really know whether this answers your question, but it is a high priority, because by doing so, we are supporting the university's research agenda. I mean, it's never been a question that we would not do that, because that wouldn't be aligned with the university. They have their own spaces. We provide, you know, resources for them, but we also give them specialized training in things like how to prepare your theses. We have research guides for them, especially for doctoral students. And others. I'm not sure if that answers the question, because, as I said, it is a priority. In other words, it's not at the expense of one or another. I guess the other side of the coin is that when the university started putting a lot more emphasis into research, we have actually changed the way we organize our librarians, so that our research librarians know that they put a lot more emphasis into faculty engagement and research student engagement, because we have another team of librarians who are more in the undergraduate student space. So we kind of reprioritized our staffing resources over the years. Other questions?
Could you tell us a little bit more about the take-up for the in-residence service?
Oh, you mean the embedded librarians?
Yes, I'm sort of managing the chat line questions, and that's a question.
Okay, so this is, I understand it's meant the embedded librarian in the school. We are still calling it the pilot, and because it's only available in the business school. We haven't made it available in other schools, because with the business school we have 3 librarians there. For, say, economics, it's only 1 librarian, so it's more practical. In terms of take-up, I asked that question. In fact, I think right now Rajan is already in the business school doing his Friday afternoon business librarian at the business school service. It is not something that they are kept busy all the time, and I know that they get people drop by and they have coffee, they have a chat. So we're not looking at just quantitative numbers, you know, you had 10 questions or 20 questions, but it's more about the quality of the interaction. It's the experience that's important. It's the message that it sends to the school, saying that, you know, we are part of the school and we really care about your needs, and it's about establishing relationships. I'm again going back to the experience economy that I talked about earlier on. It's not about products and services, it's more about the relationship. So that service is engagement service, it's a relationship building service. I'm not concerned about the numbers of questions each librarian gets, because sometimes they also say to the faculty, look, I'm already going to be there on Wednesday afternoon, why don't we get together and have a chat? So they kind of use that opportunity to set up those meetings and consultations on those 3 days. Of course, the faculty can always come to the library and meet librarians here, but it's the message it sends to the faculty that we are in their space. I hope that helps the person who asked that question. Sometimes you don't look at numbers. You do look at them, but the numbers are, it's not the only you know, story. The other side of the story is, you know, are we in their faces?
Gulcin, I think that's all the questions that's come through the chat line. On behalf of the colleagues that have attended and the ARL Standing Committee, I want to thank you for your time and your effort and your institution for allowing you to do this webinar. Thank you very much.
Well, I want to thank everyone for attending. I'm surprised we had so many people. Thank
Yes.
you. Thank you very much. Well, see you at the next webinar.
Bye, colleagues. Goodbye to
Bye.
everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Now I'm the present.